Hello, people of the internet. This is KaijuNoir with another television review of a recently completed season. And here with me, as usual, at this point, is Dylan McCandless, aka Superdm64.
Hello, everyone. It is really bizarre doing this review
Right,
because
because
we already did.
yes, we recorded this quite a while ago, like right after the season one of Better Call Saul completed, and we were like, "Oh right, let's do this, yeah!" And then we had some plans for how we were going to present this video, but then things got in the way, and then before you know it, I realized from the very get-go that one of our audios was kind of unusable. So I was embarrassed to just call up Dylan and say, "Hey, Dylan, is it okay if we do that whole thing all over again?" And
I
I
was
was
like,
like,
no, go fuck yourself. No.
do 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 do. No, but luckily, at least spoiler alert, Better Call Saul is a fucking awesome show,
Yeah, I
and
mean, obviously we cared enough to re-record this review.
right, because we just could not let it go. I mean, none of our friends have seen it or reviewed it. I mean, even Deadpoolzilla, who tends to review almost anything that comes out, did not cover Better Call Saul. I was like, we got to do it. This, it's like we're the only ones in our circle of internet YouTube friends who has watched the show,
Yeah,
and
meanwhile, Bill just finished Breaking Bad, so...
so who knows? Maybe this is kind of like a nice intro segue into our review. Could be a nice segue into him watching Better Call Saul, but I doubt he ever watches our stuff, to be honest. But
Yeah,
so
Bill doesn't do things.
no, he doesn't do things. I mean, I like at the beginning of the older recording, we established that you do things, but
Right, yeah.
you just do things. Unfortunately, Bill does not do things, which is
No,
why
I
he
just,
really
yeah, I
he.
just, no.
But you know what? He really needs to have a good old one-to-one chat with Shia LaBeouf on learning to do it.
Yeah, he needs to just do it.
Just do it! Come on! Don't let your dreams be dreams! But internet memes aside, let's talk about our pretty much our favorite show of 2015. It looks like. I mean the year is only like halfway over, but I feel like almost nothing can really top Better Call Saul.
As far as on actual television, no. I mean, obviously there's awesome Netflix original stuff, but
True.
stuff that actually airs on television, no, I don't think anything I've seen so far competes with Better Call Saul. I mean, we reviewed fucking
Gotham.
Gotham, and while we enjoyed that, it was flawed.
Right.
But with Better Call Saul, it's just a really solid show.
Oh
And I mean,
yeah.
what else would you expect from Vince Gilligan after what he gave us in Breaking Bad? Uh,
Oh yeah, like right off the bat, like well, for those of you who don't know, and if you don't know what Better Call Saul is, what the hell have you been doing since 2005? Was that when Breaking Bad started?
I think so. Sounds about right to me.
All right, I'll say it is. If not, I'll reject that reality and replace it with my own, as you normally do.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, Better Call Saul is the spin-off slash prequel series to the highly like critically praised, extremely successful series of Breaking Bad, which ended, was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before, in 2013.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Right, because I watched it. I watched it last year when it was all said and done. After it was all said and done.
Yeah,
But
yeah. By the time I got around to, I finally binge watched it. I never watched it when it was actually on television,
me neither.
and that was last year. So yeah, I think 2 years ago is probably a pretty good guesstimation of when it ended.
Right. So yeah, Breaking Bad, it was extremely successful, and one of the characters in particular, Saul Goodman, I wouldn't just say, what do you call him, a corrupt lawyer? I guess so, because he deals in very shady businesses. He's able to get anybody out of any legal situation through the most obscure legal loopholes available. Plus, he had numerous connections to, he had like an entire network of connections. I was like, hey, you need this done? I got a guy.
Right. Yeah. He's that kind of lawyer, and really good at it. Very enjoyable to watch.
And of course, the character himself, played by Bob Odenkirk, was so successful and so popular that Vince Gilligan just couldn't help but make a spin-off of this series of this character. And so, as I mentioned before, chronologically, it takes place in 2002. several years before the events of Breaking Bad even started, where we have Saul Goodman, whose real name is revealed to be James Jimmy McGill, working as a public defense lawyer, struggling to make ends meet, while also trying to support his older brother Chuck, who is a much bigger, more successful lawyer than him, but is pretty much living at home, kind of like, not bedridden, but he's stuck at home due to a medical condition that may or may not actually be all in his head. So as he's supporting his brother, the first season is kind of basically him trying to make ends meet, trying to make it big, trying to be like legitimately try to become a big successful lawyer and helping out in any way he can. But throughout the season, we do see that lawyer that we have come to know in Breaking Bad starting to emerge by the very end of the season.
Yeah, because he is so not that character when it starts.
Oh yeah, he definitely, because he doesn't have that confidence. He doesn't have that smooth, suave attitude that he has. Like that, as when in Breaking Bad, as soon as he enters a room, you know that he's got the situation he has control of the whole situation. Here, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, you see pieces of that shining through on a few occasions. Like there's some bad business that goes down involving a return appearance by a character from Breaking Bad, a gangster named Tuco, and the scene where he resolves that issue is one example of there being these like times throughout the season where you can see the person that he's going to become sort of leaking through, but he doesn't really become that person until the very end.
Mm-hmm. And that confrontation with Tuco really way early on led to one of my favorite quotes from the series. I know I'm going to butcher it, so I'm just trying to find it right now. What was it like? Well, basically the whole scene involved him saying that Tuco was going to kill these two idiotic skateboarders, Lars and Cal, who Jimmy tried to get into scamming Tuco's mother, grandmother, was it mother or grandmother? I think it was grandmother.
I think it was his grandmother. Didn't he call her Abuela or something?
Yeah, that is very true. So he tries to have them do a scam, like pretending they were run over by an old lady who just so happens to be the grandmother of Tuco. And when Tuco tries to kill all three of them, Jimmy was able to convince Tuco to simply break their legs as opposed to killing them. So when Lars calls Jimmy the worst lawyer ever, he says, "Hey, I just talked you down from a death sentence to 6 months probation. I'm the best lawyer ever."
Yeah, and the way he says it is great too, because it's like he's trying to like defend himself to this fucking kid, and he sort of like looks down as he's, "I'm the best lawyer ever." Like,
he's like, "Damn right, I'm the best lawyer ever."
Fucking unappreciative.
Oh boy, and so with that, very early on, it's kind of weird where with Breaking Bad, the whole Mexican cartel the Mexican drug cartel has always been like this big element, and I found it kind of odd that they would bring in that iconic element from the show really early on, and kind of to introduce the show.
Yeah, because obviously it's been a few months since I watched this because of the delays with this review, but. I think it's like the third or fourth episode that Tuco shows up at the end. It's pretty early on.
Tuco shows up at the end of the first episode.
Oh, it's the very first episode he shows up at the end of?
Yeah, he does. Because this was
that's even more sudden than I thought it was.
Yeah, basically. And when I first saw Tuco's face at the very end, I was immediately concerned that this series was going to try to piggyback too hard on the success of Breaking Bad, especially when we saw Mike have a little bit of a cameo appearance as a parking parking security guard in front of the court that Jimmy works at.
Yeah, he's one of those people that sits in the little booth and makes the little arm go up and down to let people in and out of the parking lot.
Which leads to a really amusing running gag with Jimmy being unable to get the proper amount of stickers to have access to the parking.
Yeah.
So
and Mike's constantly giving him shit about it. He finally gets it right at some point.
Right. And so with Tuco being there, I had concerns that, are we just going to see is this going to be like a Gotham situation where we're going to see everybody from the future show up in the story? But luckily that's not the case, because the show, it's not, while Breaking Bad was kind of like a Western when it came to that whole drug cartel sort of business, here it's less of a Western and more like a shady, what do you call it? What do you call a show like Law and Order that focuses on attorneys and court dramas, right?
Oh, well, you can call it a court drama if it's... Yeah, I guess you would call it a court drama since it's mainly just the court stuff. If you got something that also involves the police, usually stuff involving the police is called a police procedural, and then stuff involving court dramas is a court drama, obviously. And then Law and Order is kind of in the middle.
Right, I know, because I know you've had more exposure to those kinds of shows than I have. I mean, when it comes to lawyer shows...
Law and Order is interesting. I think most people lump it into the police procedural category, but when you think about it, it's kind of both depending on which episode you're watching. Because there are some episodes where the police stuff takes up like very little time, and then you spend the majority of it in the courtroom. There are other times where the court stuff is shoved into the end, and the police takes up most of the time. And then there are some times where you never even go to the courtroom because maybe the suspect, winds up offing himself or something crazy like that. So it really depends on what episode you're watching. Law and Order is a weird one to try and lump into one of these categories. But with Better Call Saul, I think you can definitely consider it a courtroom drama, although it doesn't spend all of its time in the courtroom.
That is true, because unlike a procedural or a courtroom drama where it's sort of a case of the week sort of deal, Better Call Saul is a show that's able to have an ongoing narrative where there's no status quo. There's no like, okay, now we're going to do this thing while we're going to take on this case while learning some lesson by the end of the episode. There's an ongoing story between him and the people in his life. And every once in a while, there are people that come to him for legal assistance, but that's not like the main focus of the show. The main focus of the show is, James himself and him just, trying to make it day by day.
Yeah, it's more just a drama, really, without any fancy labels.
Basically, yeah. And it's all very personal. I feel like this is a very much more personal show. There's not a lot of action outside of that first encounter with Tuco. I mean, there's also Tuco's henchman, or his right-hand man, Nacho. That leads to some make it or break it sort of race against time, the same style that Breaking Bad had. And I think perhaps the whole reason why they had Tuco and Nacho at the very beginning was to try to get like Breaking Bad fans more familiar with this world by using a type of situation that you would normally see in Breaking Bad.
And also, the introduction of Tuco at the end of that episode is really well done. You have no idea that he's going to be in the episode. Like, they don't foreshadow it at all. It's not alluded to in any way. It's not obvious. He just he opens the door, and it just happens to be him, and it's this moment, and that's how the episode ends. It's this moment that just takes your breath away as an audience member.
Before you even have time to process it, the episode just ends.
Assuming that you've seen Breaking Bad. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, it probably wouldn't have the same effect on you. Honestly, I would not recommend watching this show before Breaking Bad, even though it's a kind of a prequel.
Right. Narratively, it doesn't really rely on Breaking Bad, but I suppose it helps knowing where these characters are going to end up.
Well, and they just make nods to things that are going to happen, and if you haven't seen Breaking Bad first, I don't think you can really enjoy this show as much as you should. Like, the very beginning of the first episode, I love it. Like, at the end of Breaking Bad, Saul Goodman had to go into a witness protection. Not like the government's witness protection, but like some shady-ass witness protection shit.
Right. And that's how they start off the very first episode of the show, where we see this... where we see what happened to Saul Goodman after Breaking Bad. It was very interesting artistic wise, where it's the whole introductory sequence is all in black and white. He's balding. He's as a manager working at a Cinnabon. I think he has
a really shitty life.
I mean, Dylan can. I'm pretty sure he can explain better than me just how depressing working at a Cinnabon can be.
I mean, I've never worked at a Cinnabon, is the interesting thing, but
you've had experience at a Cinnabon.
Cinnabon is a soul crushing place. Go watch if you're interested, people. The real person who can explain to you the marvelous just insanity that is Cinnabon is go watch. There's a Jim Gaffigan sketch all about it, or not sketch, a stand-up bit all about Cinnabon and how it's so fucking depressing, and it's genius. Um, Jim Gaffigan's a stand-up comedian that me and Bill are both very fond of. Hilarious guy. Talks a lot about food. But anyway, so yeah, he's working at
His
this.
jokes are a lot. He has a lot of cake jokes.
Yeah,
His pants are off
and
in
he
a
does
lot of
this
these
voice like all the
situations.
time.
I don't sound like that.
He has his pants off in a lot of jokes. Oh, he's doing the voice again. Um,
But anyways, yeah, he's working as Cinnabon, and what leads to the actual show itself is that this like older, depressed as hell Saul Goodman, he finds an old VHS tape of one of his old cheap commercials from his days as a shady, crooked lawyer, and he starts to reminisce about these about the good old days of him, starting out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with his brother. And I feel like that's a really clever way. I think that's a really touching, a really nice touch for that Vince Gilligan did for his fans.
yeah, it's a really nice sequence. It was the perfect way to open it, I think. Opening it with that flash forward and sort of connecting it back to the events of Breaking Bad.
And it's very very interesting
Um,
he uses the VHS as a narrative device that would springboard into the events of the show itself, because the intro to every episode of Better Call Saul looks kind of like a bit of VHS quality, where everything's kind of pixelated and there are these weird visual video wipes, like VHS like camcorder style video wipes or something that would transition from screen credit to screen credit. I'm not sure if you remember those.
yeah, yeah, they were very pixelated and kind of blurry, and never the same twice.
Right.
They used a different
It's like
in every episode, I think.
yeah, it's the same music, but a different setting that's being recorded for the title sequence.
Yeah. Um,
So let's
I,
see.
which, by the way, I loved the music. Not Better Call Saul. Breaking Bad always had that sort of Western vibe.
Yeah.
And it was the music that they picked sort of went along with that. It was the desert and everything was like all atmospheric and shit. Better Call Saul is a little bit different in that it feels like kind of 70s, like especially that opening music. Um,
I guess so. I mean, when I hear that music, I kind of got more of like a maybe early '80s Miami sort of scene. I don't know why. It's kind of like the music that
I
you
don't know.
kind of imagine when you think of like a hot summer day at a pool.
It's very different from what we had in Breaking Bad, and it really fits Saul Goodman, and it's a perfect choice by Vince Gilligan. I'm glad that they did something a little different.
Oh yeah, and by the way, speaking of music, Vince Gilligan, his taste in music is still just as exquisite as it was in Breaking Bad, especially during those ever elegantly elegantly executed montage scenes.
Yes, yes. He he really knows how to pick the perfect music for any given moment, which is a great talent. It's people like
Tarantino?
shit. Yes, I'm drawing blanks right now. People like fucking.
It's all right. I've been doing that this whole review as well.
People like Tarantino do that, and it's something that I admire from a creative person. Is the ability to pick the right music for a moment.
So now
Yeah.
I guess we talked about like the overall feel and style of the show, and as well as the introductory story arc. I guess let's talk about some of our some of the important character supporting cast in the show. I mean, like first off, we have Jimmy McGill's brother Chuck, who is this big successful lawyer. He's the guy who pretty much gave Jimmy this second chance at life, because at the beginning of every episode, we have these seemingly random flashbacks that eventually lead to a bigger thing that we'll get into the end. But basically, we see Jimmy's old life as Slippin' Jimmy, the nickname given to him because he's known for as a scam artist, being able to rip people off of, hundreds, thousands of dollars on a regular basis. And so after being caught and sent to jail after a certain incident, which we'll get into later, that because it's later revealed in the show what it was, Chuck pretty much offered him the chance to move from Illinois to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and start off working as, I think he was working as like this lower rank mail job, like sorting mail, right?
Yeah, I believe he was in the mailroom, which is like a classic sort of place to start. In like like in movies and shit, people are always starting in the mailroom.
Right. I mean, I remember at the end of Monsters University, the protagonist Mike and Sully, they start in the mailroom before becoming legitimate screamers or scarers.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't see Monsters University?
I did not.
Yeah. You saw Monsters Inc., right?
Yeah, that was back when I was a child and when
Sure.
a child moves.
Well, yeah, they do the whole mailroom thing at the very end as well.
Yeah.
So,
from what that movie, I don't. Based on what I know about it, it's like it's like a remake, or not really like a remake. It's like it uses like tropes from like college movies, right?
yes, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and so and they use the mailroom thing. That's great.
Yeah. So, he starts off in the mailroom, and then eventually there are many attempts for him to try to become a legit lawyer, and he does so by the most strangest of ways, where I guess he takes online courses while he was working in the mailroom, and he gets like an online degree, a degree in law, to practice law, but unfortunately he was rejected by Chuck's what do you call a law firm, HHM, Hamlin, McGill, and McGill.
Which Jimmy spends the entirety of the show, or the majority. We'll get into it. Yeah, there's a twist near the end, but we'll talk about that later because that's kind of the big thing.
Right.
He blames it almost exclusively, or pretty much, he blames it exclusively on
Hamlin.
Chuck's. Hamlin, which is Chuck's partner, his law partner.
Right, and so kind of like there's this ongoing rivalry, I guess you can say, where Jimmy is trying to get back at HHM. He's trying to, try to one-up them. At some point, he even tries to troll them by trying to straight up copy their billboard ads.
Yeah, that was great.
Just trying to do whatever he can to get his name out in the spotlight, and try and get the try to take their clients away from them, which again, like this ongoing narrative. And Hamlin is pretty much set up to be this big douchebag who seemingly tries to just stop at nothing to keep Jimmy down. So
you think he's just out to just like ruin Jimmy's life, and there's really a question of like why throughout the entire thing you just keep wondering like why does he do this?
Why you do this, Hamlin?
Why you do this, Hamlin? And some of the things that Jimmy does to try and get back, he could have made better choices, certainly, but
yeah. It's funny, like, Jimmy, he seems to be like a sharp guy. Like, he's a person who has a clean head on his shoulders, but there are times where he, like Walter White, he does let his ego get the best of him in many instances.
Yeah. It happens pretty often. So many times he'll get like upset and like have these like fighting matches with, or like near the end he has that shouting match with what's her name?
Kim?
Yes, Kim. That is her name. He yells at her and takes her to task because she suggests that he take this deal that's offered him from HHM, and it's a nice little moment. It's a good scene. It's an emotional scene. He has been working on this case for a while, and they're sort of trying to steal it away from him, and he needs the money. It's just this really fucked up situation, but it's a good example of how he isn't always the best at handling tense situations or handling the pressure. He will often sort of lose control of things in that regard. Like you said, very similar to what Walter White would do. And really, Jimmy's journey throughout this season is not at all dissimilar from what happened to Walt over the course of Breaking Bad.
Most definitely. And because we mentioned Kim, I feel like it's appropriate to talk a little bit about her. She's kind of like Jimmy's best friend slash love interest slash confidant, where she's like the one person he can trust more than anyone else. And I believe they both met each other through because both of them did turn out to be working in the mailroom. And while Kim was able to get a position at HHM, Jimmy unfortunately could not. So they kind of live in these separate worlds, and as much as they want to be with each other, because there is a romantic chemistry between the two of them, it's like because their respective worlds kind of pull them apart, sadly.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Ms. Gilligan do a romance that I actually liked.
She's no
Because
Skylar.
in Breaking Bad, you had two wives,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't like either of them, especially Marie. Um,
Jesus, Marie.
but there are plenty of videos in which we go on rants about Marie. The point being that this is a female character who, unlike Marie, I was very able to just like get behind. She's a great character. I don't know who the actress is that portrays her, but she does a fantastic job, I thought.
Let's see. I'll just do a little quick search right here while you continue.
She she's sort of caught in the middle of this ongoing conflict that we were talking about between Jimmy and HHM, and she wants to help Jimmy out, but at the same time she's got her career to worry about, and that's sort of a constant bringer of tension throughout the story.
Right, and the actress's name is Rhea Seehorn. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, although knowing my track record, it's most likely not. But yeah, that's right. The thing is, yeah, she's trying to further her career, trying to become like a full-on partner with HHM, and it's not like she's selfish at all. She doesn't come across as being selfish at all for those reasons, but it's just that, hey, this is the real world. I have to, find a way of better, making a better career for myself and having making a better living.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Jimmy's the one who oftentimes comes across as the selfish asshole. There are many times where he will do something to just take a stab at HHM, and
even if it will bite him in the ass in the end.
Yeah, and over the course of doing so, he will often unwittingly cause trouble for Kim. There's an instance in which she winds up getting some sort of like a demotion or something. I don't really remember the details because, again, it has been a while. But she gets like...
This involves this pair, husband and wife pair called the Kettlemans. They have been laundering money from the husband's workplace over a period of time, and they pretty much got caught. And they were trying to find a lawyer who can help them be charged charged as innocent in a court case, even though if they try to go plead themselves innocent, it's basically a losing battle because there's numerous amounts of evidence going against them. So
they are the least innocent people on the planet.
They try to be like all squeaky clean, but even though it's just clearly a front for them.
It's like they're the worst possible clients you could ever imagine having, and Jimmy wants them so bad. And there are times when I'm like, Jimmy, I get it, you're trying to further your career, this is a big case, even if you lose, it'll be good to get your name out there, but it just doesn't seem like it's worth it.
So yeah, they pretty much pass on Jimmy because, as they put it, he's the kind of lawyer that guilty people go towards, or the kind of people who they have no one else to turn to. So they pass up on Jimmy and go to HHM.
That's exactly why he would have been perfect for them.
Right. And HHM said, listen, okay, there's no way we can get you off scot-free. So as Dylan mentioned, we have this deal where if you do plead guilty, then your husband will only be in jail for a couple of months or a couple of years as opposed to a much larger amount of time. Of course, they refuse this, and Kim basically loses the Kettleman case as they go towards... they go back to Jimmy. So Jimmy decides to make the decision to point the Kettlemans to Kim's direction so that Kim will not lose her job in the end. And I thought, it's a really good character defining moment. Just despite the number of mistakes or that, a hothead like Jimmy would make, he does have a conscience of some sort, especially towards Kim, the one person, as I mentioned, that who's kind of like the closest to him, besides his brother, which we'll get into shortly.
Right. Oh, Chuck. That is a video unto itself. Yeah, it's very often Jimmy, who winds up doing things and unwittingly causing trouble for Kim. You were talking about how she doesn't come across as selfish at all. He's kind of the selfish asshole, and he realizes it. And he makes up for it. He pretty much forces the Kettlemans to go back and take the deal, and then he disposes of the money in a good way and regrets it later.
Oh yeah. Which I think. Before we move on from the Kettlemans, I gotta say, once again we have another bitchy wife.
Yes, she is. She is a bitch. It's interesting because the husband kind of reminded me of Walt, like when Breaking Bad started. Like he looks a lot like Walt did, and so you had him.
He's very submissive. He's very submissive while the wife is in control of making like big decisions.
There are several times where he's like, maybe we should, or he doesn't say this, but you can see it in his face where he's like, maybe these guys are right, maybe we should take the deal, I did launder all that money, rascal me. But his wife is just like, no, we're innocent, and she's just a bitch. She's the kind of
no,
bitch.
We didn't steal any money. What money are you talking about? Ha 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 ha.
She's so deluded, and she's the kind of bitch who tries to act like she's not a bitch. She tries to act like she's like this nice, like proper, like perfect, like woman, and she's the bitchiest bitch of them all.
Insert clip from Krillin from DBZ Abridged.
Yes. Or if that son of hers is named Kyle, insert the fucking song from South Park.
Oh. Yeah. So I guess now this would be another good opportunity to talk about Mike, who is the secondary antagonist who has his own story that's parallel to Jimmy's throughout this season. And much like...
Wait, did you mean to say secondary protagonist?
What did I say, antagonist?
Yeah, you said antagonist.
Ah, shit. Sorry, folks.
I was like, you ain't talking about Breaking Bad.
All right, he's a secondary protagonist whose story, or his character arc throughout the season runs parallel to Jimmy's, as both are characters that try to live life in as best as they could in a legitimate way. They both kind of fall back towards their old tendencies, but while Jimmy's does it so for kind of selfish reasons, Mike's does so in a very selfless reason, because as we saw in Breaking Bad, he has a very close relationship to both his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter. Here we see both family members and why he goes to great lengths to help them out.
Yeah, it was nice to finally meet them, because they were mentioned often in Breaking Bad, where Mike was concerned, and we finally get to see them. And we finally get to see the whole story of him when he was a cop and how he wound up where he is now. We get to see all of that, and he's of course excellent in the show, just as he was in Breaking Bad. The actor, whatever his name is.
Checking right now. Jonathan Banks.
Jonathan Banks does a fantastic job. I love the episode where he's the I don't know how to describe it to the audience. The pimento cheese episode, Andres.
Was that the flashback episode?
Yeah, he's like going on it's when he starts doing illegal shit for money.
Oh, that. Okay, when he helps out that one dweeby kind of individual.
Yes. And the other guy that's there, he's on this security job basically. Yeah. And the other guy that's there is giving him shit for not having a gun. And then he fucking kicks the dude's ass and takes all of his guns.
And he knows he knows where every gun is hidden because he's been around the block so many times.
And then he asked the other guy who's there for the job, who's this 280 pound, or not 280, that's too small, fucking 300, fucking, I don't know how big he was. He's just a fucking gorilla, right? Yeah, a gorilla. And he asked him, he's like,
bear!
He asked him, he's like, you want one of these guns? And the guy fucking runs. I love that. He's such a badass. Breaking Bad was full of like lovable badass characters, and Mike is sort of the carryover from that
Hmm.
tradition, I guess you could say.
And there was that one standoff with Nacho, who makes an appearance one more time to, I guess, to kind of set up a future future plot line to say that Nacho's kind of got his own thing going on separate from Tuco's. And when Mike confronts Tuco about not giving him that extra $20 that was part of the agreement, it's like they have this stare down, this epic stare down. It's like both characters are trying to call each other's bluff, with Mike winning out in the end, and just so he can get that $20.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Everything with Mike is fucking great. He, I don't know. It's so weird when you have two characters as great as him and Jim to think, which one do I like more? I don't know. I mean, we spend more time with Jimmy, and he's the focus of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike is such a badass.
And I guess perhaps maybe my favorite episode of the season is the flashback episode where he is confronted by his daughter-in-law, who tries to ask him if he knew any information whatsoever of the death of his son, her husband. And so he, after being investigated by the police from whatever city they all used to come from, he finally reveals to his daughter-in-law that how he was a crooked cop because, he stole money from crime scenes just like every other cop, and his son, who was also a cop that worked with him, tried to be straight edge. He did not accepted money, and so as a result, because he would not get with the program per se, he ended up being killed by two other crooked cops, to which Mike ended up killing those two cops.
Yeah, his son wanted to remain a good cop,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the reason for his death. And it's sort of an interesting thing going on there, the dynamic between him and the wife, because you can tell the wife has suspicions that maybe her dead husband was actually one of the crooked cops, because she's found this money, and so she thinks that like he was on the take and that Mike is sort of covering for him. And there's this great moment when Mike tells her no, what's his name was a good cop, and he's like, I was the crooked one, and then he tells the story.
Uh-huh. A very emotionally powerful episode right there.
It's probably, I would probably have to agree with you, Andres. It was probably my favorite episode of the season too. Although the shit that happens when Jimmy in the very last episode when he goes back to Cicero.
Right, yeah.
That was also great. Not as emotionally powerful as Mike's story, but very funny.
Oh yeah. And speaking of funny, before I wanted to get into the last few episodes of the of the season, I did want to bring up one of my favorite episodes in terms of like comedic moments, where there's this one moment where Jimmy is able to pull off this big scam to where he was able to get his name out there, and there's this short little it's sort of like not really a montage, but basically it's a series of sequences where Jimmy meets potential clients, all of whom are kind of crazy in their own little way, which leads to...
Oh, yeah, this episode, I love the fucking guy who wanted to succeed from the United States of America.
Yeah.
Jimmy accepts the case because, it's such a big, intense thing that he was able to name, this ridiculous price, knowing that this guy was rich enough to pay for it. But then the guy offers him payment in this fake money.
With that guy's face on it.
That is going to be the currency of his new country after he succeeds from the Union.
Which, of course, has no value whatsoever outside the rest of the real world.
It wouldn't have any value unless he actually won his court case, which we all know he's not going to.
Right. If it was, legit money, then, that would have been so great for Jimmy, because he was all happy about it, because this was a case that would have gone on for years, and he could have kept getting paid for those number of years, and then all of that hope just comes crashing down.
And I love the moment when the guy tells him what he wants to do, like succeed from the United States of America. You can tell from Jimmy's just like facial expressions, he's thinking to himself, "Is this guy fucking serious?" Like,
And speaking of, crazy situations, the next guy that he talks to, or what's the guy before? No, I think it's the guy afterwards, where
I think this guy. I know the one you're talking about.
yeah, and
I
this
think
guy
he
he
was
wants
after.
okay, with this character he wanted to hire Jimmy because he wanted to put a patent on this toilet of his that he wants to make a toilet that helps children learn how to potty train themselves. And what better way than to have a talking toilet that constantly praises children for putting stuff in his mouth.
Oh yes, and telling them how big it is.
Oh, yeah. Put it in my mouth, little Timmy. That's a big one. Oh, yeah. It's like the
Give
most
it to me.
Give it to me, Timmy. Oh, boy.
Oh,
My, how big you are.
oh, that was the one that I was like, oh.
And the inventor of this toilet, he's like completely unaware of just how badly these audio clips sound out of context.
He's one of these like really naive, like sexually innocent people.
Kind of like me before I met the Sons of Serizawa.
Yeah, kind of. I could see Andres inventing this toilet.
So yeah, the pedo toilet. Yeah.
When Jimmy like confronts him about it, it's like, hey man, don't you think this could be like taken the wrong way? He is so like appalled. He thinks Jimmy's the sick one.
He's like, what do you mean? I have a family. You're a sick person.
Get out of my house. It was great.
Yeah, the pedo toilet is easily one of my like favorite moments of the season, like in terms of real highly amusing and just what the fuck kind of moments in the show.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff of Jimmy when he's just trying to make it as a lawyer. Between that and like the shit he goes through with all these elderly people.
Yeah, because there's like this another case that he gets where he finds some shady business going on with the retirement home where a lot of his elder clients live.
Because one thing he starts doing partway through the show to try and do things legit is that he tries to specialize in elder law, which is the writing of wills and so on and so forth.
Right, and he goes so far as to dress up like Matlock to appeal to this older clientele.
Which I appreciated that reference.
Oh yeah. Oh boy! In fact, we would have had a reference to that in this title card that we were hoping to have, but unfortunately never came through. For no one's fault, by the way. No one's fault at all whatsoever.
So now you have this incredibly ambiguous title card.
Yes, featuring a brand new mascot that no one has seen before. I mean, we used Gundam Chronos for the Gotham one. And I'm pretty sure, even though nobody commented, I'm pretty sure some people were like, "What the fuck is that Gundam-looking thing?" Now they see this Ultraman-esque type of character, and like, now what?
Yes, the mini mascots of Superdm64.
Yeah.
Which people who are now furiously typing into Google don't bother Googling Gundam Chronos because it's an original creation. You won't find any information out there, and I'm not going to give you any either.
Original character, do not steal. So let's see. So yeah, he goes into elder law, and he has this big case, but he couldn't do it alone, and so that he decides to partner up with his brother. And I guess, yeah, now's a better time than any than to go into the last major character, and from there on go into spoiler territory. I mean, we've been talking about spoilers the whole show a bit. When I make spoilers, I mean, kind of like with Gotham, we'll get into this big old part of the review where we get into spoilers for the last couple of episodes. But I guess before we go into that, should we go into our final thoughts right now?
Which this isn't as big of a mindfuck as the ending of Gotham was, thankfully.
Actually, I think it was much more surprising than it was in Gotham.
It was more surprising. Gotham was a mindfuck in that it was like, you watched it and you were like, what's happening? But this is like a legit plot twist that makes you say, oh my god. But yeah, I guess we can sum up our final thoughts on it and then talk about the final story arc. I fucking love the first season of Better Call Saul. I can't wait to see more. I don't have any major complaints. It's just as good as Breaking Bad was so far,
Definitely, yeah. I mean,
and
I would.
that's saying something.
And I've said this in the previous recording that is, that will not never be used, but I would say that this first season was better than Breaking Bad's first season, where with
Mm.
Breaking Bad, there's a lot of good stuff in it, but those first, what was it, 7 episodes, just felt it felt really slow. Like it took a while for it to pick up the pace and to get things going. I guess it felt very experimental, and it wasn't until like season 2 where it really hit its stride. And I feel like right out of the bat, right off the bat, Better Call Saul is able to succeed in telling this really big, engaging story. And even if, it's already certain that this show is going to get a second season, but had this show tragically have ended at season 1, I feel like it still would have been just as satisfying of a show, given that it really was able to tell a complete story arc of one man's regression to, back to, I guess, like his darker side after dealing with so much shit in his life.
Yeah,
And
which I mean, it's not. Yeah, what was I about to say? Shit. Shit.
not as
I had
good,
a
not as
point.
powerful, not as...
No, I had a point, and then I think I fucked it up, and now I can't. Well, give me a minute. You can cut this out.
All right. That's all right. But yeah, it was able to tell a big complete story, and
Oh yeah,
that's...
it's not as if it cut off in such a place that it would be frustrating if this was the only season, because while there is still more detail that we need about like specifics of how things that were in Breaking Bad come about, at the same time it tells the arc of this first story. When it's over, it really becomes what you hoped it was, which was him turning into Saul Goodman. Because the very end of this show, there's this exchange between him and Mike, and at that moment, he becomes the character that you wanted him to become. And so even if this had been the only season, and even though there would be some sort of holes in the middle that we still didn't know how this happened, or like how he met Gus, or all this shit, it would still have been successful in telling that story,
Most
and
definitely.
telling it very well.
Yeah, I guess like the only real loose end would be Nacho.
Yeah, yeah. I want to know what happens to Nacho. Nacho is not in Breaking Bad,
Oh
obviously.
yeah, I'm going to call it right now. He is going to die.
I would not be surprised. Maybe Mike will kill him. We'll see.
So yeah, overall, easily a 5 out of 5. Best show I've seen so far. I mean, I don't watch a lot of TV nowadays, but of the shows that I've taken the time to watch on a regular basis, Better Call Saul easily steals the show, and I am looking forward to watching season 2 when it
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess, do you normally do ratings, or do you prefer not to?
I do sometimes. Just depends. If you want to do ratings, then I'll give it one. I mean, I don't
All
really.
right.
What usually happens if I'm in a video with somebody who does ratings, I'll
Uh,
do one. I don't usually do any on my channel just because I don't really do
Reviews?
quote unquote reviews.
Uh-huh.
Uh, although there is actually something that I might be doing. But anyway, that's possible future.
So yeah, I guess for a rating for season 1.
I gotta give it a 5 out of 5. This is really solid television. I mean, and just because I can't think of like any complaints, I don't remember if I had any complaints the first time we reviewed it or not. But as of right now, I can't think of anything to detract from it. I think it's brilliant television. I think if you liked Breaking Bad, you need to watch this. If you've never seen Breaking Bad, the fuck is wrong with you? Go watch Breaking Bad, and then come back and watch this
Just
too.
do it!
Just do it! It's too bad Bill actually finally did watch Breaking Bad, or we could use that Shia LaBeouf quote on him.
Right. Now I want, because it's green screen, I want someone to just like put that in like Werewolf of Carl Place or whatever video where put in the his gay Yeti review, And just have Shia LaBeouf in the background behind Bill, just telling him to do it, to review Yeti.
We ever get Bill to fucking see Kill Bill, that's how his fucking review should start.
Yeah, he's just like having a stare down with Shia LaBeouf. Do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams!
It would be funny because seeing Kill Bill is so not his dream.
They're more like nightmares.
It's more, don't let your nightmares be dreams. Wait, what?
Never mind, just do it! Just
do it! Triangle pyramid in front of my genitals. What is he doing?
I don't know.
Aside from it.
Anyways, I guess now
I really hope that that whole thing. I really hope the whole thing is just a very clever ad for Nike.
Anyways, on to the last character that we did not talk about because he is the most important character in Jimmy's life, and that is Chuck, the person that kind of gave him this second chance at life, the guy that inspired him to Jimmy to get into law, into practicing law, and the person that Jimmy kind of owes his life to, and thus kind of sacrifices a lot of his time and money supporting Chuck, because Chuck has this rather interesting quote-unquote medical condition where he is extremely sensitive to electromagnetic waves, and thus pretty much anything that's electrical or that runs on electricity or batteries or, or any electronic devices, what have you, it gives him, it basically makes him nauseous and kind of puts him under a lot of stress and pain. So he's kind of, in a way, living off the grid, where he just shuts off everything, disconnects every single piece of electronics from his house, and he's pretty much stuck at home, because if he steps out, then, he just gets into like this, he starts having an episode where he just on the verge of collapsing due to all this, frequencies that I guess he apparently picks up, or, he is injured by.
Now, there is some question as to whether or not this is all in his head. Mm-hmm. Because this disease, which I had never heard of before seeing the show, I looked it up, and there are people who claim to have this, but there's no consensus about whether it is an actual physical condition or if it's completely psychosomatic.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like one of those things where it's like, if you think you're sick, then you actually do become sick. Where it's like, kind of like, it's a very mental sort of thing.
Yeah, which that might not be the case at all. He might actually have something wrong with him, but it's kind of hinted at that it's in his head. Yeah,
where it's like, maybe it's kind of like he's not intentionally doing this, but I suspect that he kind of has this, as we'll get into that later, but it's sort of like he has this sort of, I don't know, it's something about, without getting to spoilers just yet, I know I've been teasing about this the whole video, but he wants to, I guess he's very concerned about his brother, to the point where he wants to know everything that's going on in Jimmy's life. And so the moment that he feels nervous, the moment that he feels uncomfortable with what Jimmy's doing, that's when that illness tends to pick up. So I feel like it's sort of like a mental reaction to his concern, or to his obsession over Jimmy's well-being, I think.
Yeah. And there's also the two main pieces of evidence to state that it's in his head. Mm-hmm. Is that isn't there a moment when he's in the hospital that somebody tells him that their cell phone is off, but it really isn't, and then his
right, it was the electronic bed. She pretends to turn it off.
Right, but it is actually
still on.
When she pretends to turn it off, that satiates him. Also, near the end of the series, he decides that he's going to kick his disease, and he pretty much does.
By attempting to slowly build up a resistance to it, by exposing himself little by little to more electrical appliances, and begins working again when he is inspired by Jimmy to get back into covering this big case with the shady retirement home.
Yes, which is when we uncover the big problem. Basically, how it starts is that he convinces Jimmy to turn the case over to HHM.
Mm-hmm. And so Jimmy does so, believing that this is the kind of opportunity, like by giving such a big case to HHM, it feels like this could be his shot at being accepted as one of them, as a legit partner.
Right. That of course, does not happen. And there's an exchange where he basically asks Hamlin why he hates him so much. Aside from the dick move he pulled with the billboard. And, what comes to light, basically, is that all those years ago when Jimmy tried to become a lawyer at HHM and got shot down, and he always thought that Hamlin was the one who had held him back, in reality, Chuck was the bad guy all along.
He was the douchebag this whole time.
Chuck is the asshole. And he turns out to be quite the asshole indeed, going on a rant about how Jimmy is not a real lawyer. And he basically seems to have the impression of his brother that Jimmy's just not lawyer material. He's not the kind of person who should be doing law. He kind of sees Jimmy the same way that the wife of the Kettleman woman saw him. The kind of lawyer that guilty people hire. He has no respect for Jimmy's online lawyer degree.
He finds him an embarrassment as a lawyer.
He finds him an embarrassment as a lawyer and as a brother. He still thinks that he's, fucking slipping Jimmy, and he doesn't give him enough credit to that. He doesn't give enough credence or credit to the idea that Jimmy could really change. He doesn't think that he's changed. He doesn't think that he ever can change.
And it kind of leads to this, like, me being suspecting that he must have this sort of, like, superiority complex over his brother. He, wants to be reassured that he is on top. He was always going to be on top. And therefore, this could, this could have led to that hypersensitivity towards electromagnetic waves that mental or physical condition that he develops because, it's a way of unintentional way of making sure he keeps an eye on Jimmy and that he always has a certain dominance or a certain presence in Jimmy's life.
Yeah, when we get a flashback when Jimmy's back in Cicero telling his friend, the fat guy, that Marco, telling him that he's moving to
Albuquerque
and that he's going to be working with Chuck, and his friend tries to warn him there. He's like, Chuck's kind of an asshole. I don't know if those were his exact words, but he basically tries to warn him of that. It's such a great reveal because throughout the entire show, Chuck has been this, or at least we thought he was this sort of, very respectable character, this great lawyer who is suffering from this terrible mental condition, basically,
and a very supportive family member. For all we know, that Chuck is the only family in Jimmy's life.
Yeah, and whenever he would have those moments where he didn't believe that Jimmy had really changed, there are a couple times over the show where he thinks Jimmy is going back to his old ways. You think when you're watching those moments that it's out of genuine concern. In reality, he's trying to bust the guy.
He's just disgusted with his brother's past, and as he put it in the big reveal, I quote, "You're not a real lawyer." He just straight up tells that to Jimmy's face, and the fact that throughout this entire season, with the Kettlemans, with the elder law, with Tuco, Jimmy has proven time and time again that he can succeed at being the best damn lawyer ever, and that he's been busting his balls, risking his life on many occasions. He does this, with the hopes of, proving to his older brother that he can make it as a lawyer, only to be torn down emotionally by the very person he has looked up to. Is such this brilliant shock to both him and the audience, because we've rooted for him this entire time.
And so even more so than Nacho, the big looming thread that we want to see going forward, or at least I definitely want to see this, is I want to know what's going to happen now, because Jimmy and Chuck's relationship is now in this very strained place. And even after all this shit has happened, Jimmy is still, concerned with Chuck.
Hmm.
He gives Hamlin a list of all the things that Chuck has to have done for him on a daily basis, and they send somebody from HHM to take care of those needs, whereas before it was Jimmy doing it all. And he still shows genuine concern for his brother, and the brother seems to regret the episode that happened between them when he looks through his window and sees Jimmy out there.
Yeah.
And so the question now is, what's going to happen with them? Are they going to, come to some sort of of an understanding, or is this effectively the end of their relationship in any positive or meaningful way? That remains to be seen.
Hmm. And since we've never seen Chuck in Breaking Bad, we can only assume what may or may not happen to him.
Yeah, I mean, he might die. He might just go away.
Him or something, or maybe he's just in the sidelines, just looking at his brother be successful while also dragging the McGill name into the ground. Well, technically, he changed his name, so I don't know just what happened, what he would think of Saul Goodman.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
Oh yeah, the catchphrase does get brought up in flashbacks.
Yeah. Which have we talked about the flashbacks and his past?
We talked a little bit about them, how they've all kind of interconnected. Like, they seem to be random at first, but they all are pretty much building to the final episode of the season, where he does go back to his roots, goes back to Illinois. He reunites with his friend Marco, who was seen in 2 flashbacks in throughout the season, and he kind of gets into doing like this big old montage of pulling off numerous scams after scams, which eventually leads to this line of success leads to an abrupt end when his old pal, his best friend, his amigo, his partner in crime, Marco, dies of a heart attack, and that really kind of changed. Is like the last event where, I guess in a way, it sort of inspires him to play up his Slippin' Jimmy persona, much like how, in a similar situation from Breaking Bad, where Walter White is given a chance to escape this whole meth and drug business by, accepting his friend's donations for his cancer treatments. Jimmy, on the other hand, he's given an opportunity to join another law firm, but at the end, he's just so fed up with trying to live a legit life that he rejects the offer and decides to make it out on through his own terms. And it's brilliantly, represented by the fact that he is wearing Marcos' watch at the end.
Yes. And that last conversation between him and Mike, which is the very last thing that we see, I think, in which he basically asked Mike, why did we get rid of that money from the Kettlemans?
Right, because before they partnered up to steal the Kettlemans' money and submit it to the court as evidence, so that the Kettlemans would be forced to take the deal from Kim, go back to Kim and take that deal.
Right. And Mike tells him, well, you wanted to do the right thing. And I'm paraphrasing here simply because I don't remember the exact dialogue. Mm-hmm. But after him saying, you wanted to do the right thing, Jimmy basically comes to the realization of, fuck all that noise. Screw trying to do the right thing. What has that ever gotten him? And now he's going to strike out on his own. There's even, and you're right, there's so many moments throughout the show where he could possibly finally succeed and go legit, but then something will happen to just fuck it all up. There's before he decides that the only right thing to do is to turn in the money from the Kettlemans, he almost buys like this big office, and his success story is right there on the horizon. But he keeps being held back, ultimately, by trying to do what he thinks Chuck would do. And at the end, when his relationship with Chuck falls to pieces, he kind of realizes that, he can't be worried about what Chuck would do. He has to do things, his way. Mm-hmm. That's sort of, at least that's how I interpreted the ending. That's the realization that I think he came to.
And I think I made this, I kind of made an analysis of the very last shot in the film. I can't remember exactly what I told you, but I think the last shot involves him driving down the road, away from the court, and we have a top-down, like a top-down view of the road that he drove on, and it just shows these two yellow parallel lines. The parallel lines possibly could represent the journey that both Mike and Jimmy have taken throughout this whole season. But I noticed the fact that he is driving on the left lane, where it's, instead of going taking the right path towards the court, he's taking the the left lane, going the opposite direction of what he was been trying to do this whole season. I think I made I may have made a more complicated or a more in-depth analyzation, but that's kind of all I can remember from what I told you.
Right. Again, it's weird to be re-reviewing this like 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
Not being as fresh as we were at the time, but technical issues, these things do occur.
Right. And I do remember in the failed recording, I forgot to mention the scene where at the beginning of the last, I think it's the beginning of the last episode, after Jimmy learns about the truth from Chuck. He is volunteering at the retirement home once again. He's doing the whole he's hosting a bingo game with all these senior citizens, and there's this really wonderful scene where he has his mental breakdown and pretty much reveals the events that led him to getting arrested and eventually being picked up by his brother. And it's like he talks about the events that set up the events in motion that would have led him to where he is now.
Right.
And yeah, I thought it was a very powerful scene and a brilliant, just performance, because it's just Bob Odenkirk just going on and on with his raw emotion throughout the whole scene. He's the only one talking, and the fact that he goes on for a good, I don't know, like 5 minutes or so, and it's just you can't just help but just appreciate just fine acting like such as that.
Yeah, Odenkirk does an amazing job. He's really the reason that we have this spinoff to begin with. I mean, every time that he would show up on screen in Breaking Bad, he would steal the scene, which is quite the accomplishment when you're acting, alongside fucking Bryan Cranston, to be able to come in and steal a scene the way he did. But he does, just with this overwhelming amount of personality that he brings into the role. And with Better Call Saul, with that being, the look behind that character, so to speak, the origin and the motivations and all that good stuff, we get to see a whole other dimension of this person than what we had in Breaking Bad. Whereas before it was just the charisma and the personality and the smooth talking and all that shit. Now we see, sort of the more human elements of him. We see him as we see him as a more rounded character, and it's fantastically well done. I don't think we need to. I don't think there's much that hasn't been said on the internet as far as praising the writing talents of Vince Gilligan, but this is another fantastic example.
Now, in terms of season 2, do you think they'll still keep the supporting cast from this season? Because throughout this season, we've kind of had Jimmy's life basically revolved around HHM, but with him going off in his own direction, do you think HHM and Kim, Hamlin, Chuck, do you think they'll all still be there for season 2?
I think that they should be, because I think that some of the plot threads, are still hanging. Like I said before, we're going to want to know what happens between Jimmy and Chuck in the future. We're going to want to know where that relationship goes, especially now that he is going to be going in a completely different moral direction from his brother. There's sure to be some conflicts to arise out of that. And so I think they would be remiss not to show that. And, the rest of them would have to play a presence because, because if the nature of the story warrants that we have to have Chuck moving forward. We have to know what's going on with them. He's connected to HHM, and a big part of his character is his relationship to HHM. He has so much pride in his work that he puts it above everything else. You can't really do the rest of the story that needs to happen, I don't think, without him. And then with Kim, it's just, you need her because of her relationship to Jimmy.
Right. I guess outside of Mike, she's the only person I guess he is well acquainted with in his life.
Yeah.
Now
that
Chuck is seemingly out of the picture.
Yeah, and I can just imagine the conversation she's gonna have with Jim. Yeah, or basically saying, "Why the fuck didn't you go? Why didn't you take that job?"
Oh,
Like,
yeah, because, like, Kim basically busted her ass to try to get that opportunity for Jimmy.
yeah. So I think they would be remiss not to bring these supporting characters back because their stories are not done. There's too much dangling up there in the air and too much that needs to be resolved. And damn it, we need to know what happens to Nacho.
Right, right. But more
And
importantly, what becomes of the pedo toilets?
yes, what becomes of the pedo toilet? Does this become a household brand?
Will
Or
this
does the
will
internet
this
give it a
will,
life of its own?
will this be the next pizza roof pizza?
I certainly hope so. And also, another thing I want to see moving forward, just to talk about things we want to see moving forward, is more setup for the events of Breaking Bad. And what I mean by that is, at some point, Jimmy's going to have to meet Gus.
Right.
Because he's the one who sort of sets up that meeting for Walt in Breaking Bad, if I'm remembering correctly. So we know that there is a connection between Saul Goodman and Gus and pretty much all the underworld.
Oh, and I guess how he comes to possibly obtain, because he in season 1 he's had this tiny little room rented out for an office in this what was it, Vietnamese salon. And
Yeah.
it appears to possibly be the same salon that he later owns and attempts to give to Walter White in Breaking Bad. So, how does he become the owner of that whole salon if that's the same salon that he's been working in? There's also how is he able to later obtain the funds? How does he make those connections and eventually builds this sort of reputation and eventually obtains that office and the tacky clothes and eventually his I guess his ragtag group of employees that he pays that you see. And how does he meet Huel?
I want to know how he meets Huel and
The other
Bill
guy.
Burr, the guy who's played by Bill Burr, or whatever his name is in the show.
Uh-huh.
I want to know how he meets them and his secretary and how he gets that little office. And there's so much more setup that needs to be done here.
Yeah. You know what? Imagine if they introduced Huel the same way they introduced Saul Goodman by having a flash forward to show him after the events of Breaking Bad, still hiding out at the safe house because he's afraid of what will happen to him.
What if he meets Huel because Huel is working at a Cinnabon?
Oh, it's all connected.
We have a flashback revealing that when Huel first started at the Cinnabon, he was an incredibly skinny man.
Yes, I want to see that now.
I love Huel. Heavy
yeah.
breathing bastard.
It's like when he saw him sleeping on that pile of money, he's like, this guy knows what I'm thinking. I like this guy. I like the way he thinks.
This guy gets it. I'm going all Scrooge McDuck in there. Brilliant.
So let's see, Annie, is there any other thoughts you want to say before we end this review of ours?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything.
All right, then it seems like we've said all that there needs to be said. Go watch Breaking Bad. Fuck! I can't believe I keep doing that.
Do watch Breaking Bad.
Yes, go watch Breaking Bad. And
another big plot point that's still kind of hanging is what's going to happen with this Elder case. It's all in the hands of HHM now, but I think I still want to know how it turns out.
It seems like the people who live in that retirement home, they still are concerned with what became of Jimmy. So does he still maintain a relationship with those elderly people?
And most importantly, who won that game of bingo?
Oh yeah, do they ever get another number besides, what was it, 2 or 6? Like he keeps getting the same number over and over again. Do they get a different number?
Right. Has the bingo world of that retiring home, does it ever recover? Do they ever find another bingo guy? All these thrilling questions and more to come in Better Call Saul Season 2.
So with that said, that has been our review for Season 1 of Better Call Saul. I have been your host, Andres Perez, a.k.a. KaijuNoir.
And I have been Superdm64.
And still will be?
And still will be. Yeah, I did it again, didn't I?
So until next time, everybody, take care.